Just jumping in to let you know that my next mentorship intake kicks off on the 31st of January. If you're somebody who's a couple years into the industry, feeling a little bit like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, struggling to find clients, struggling to find sort of confidence in what you're doing, I'm here to help you. We work on training systems and business systems to ensure you success in this chapter of your life. If you want, the code CHILLI, CHILLI, gets you $200 off for an early bird price, and that is available until December 11th. Welcome back to Melbourne Strength Cultures Podcast, number one in the hearts, number one in the charts. We're here with Lucas Aaron. The Range of Strength on Instagram is, and I'm looking forward to the chat. I think the boys are here too. We're just having a good laugh off air, sorry. But welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What brings you to Australia?
Did a couple workshops over the last couple of weeks. And that was a bit of a move to make this year. Was kind of like building out into the online space. My goal has always been, I want to get out and see a bit of the world and teach. That was like since day one. Becoming a coach was like, I want to get out there and see people, see things. And so, I mean, kind of getting at this stage now where that's actually a thing. And I've made the most, I guess, contact and growth with Range of Strength in Australia.
Oh, really?
So when coming to that decision, it was like, should I do one in Canada? I don't know if there'd be anyone there, to be honest.
What makes what do you feel it is about the Aussies that they like your message and your style of training?
I think it's maybe just like the outside the box thinking, holistic approach to it. It hasn't quite made its way over to our side of the world right now, like some of the stuff that people see me doing, and I take it to the extremes anyway, just for the shit of it for the most part. But there's different approaches to it. So it hasn't quite made its way over to where we're at, but I think that's what it is, because a lot of the accounts I follow here, like even being with Eugene the last couple of days, I've been following him for a long time because of those principles of, just having a more holistic all-around approach to training.
It's funny you say that, because I would view it the other way. I would say like North America, Canada, like just the US in general. I view that as they've got more of that approach than what we have. Yeah,
maybe just not where I'm at in Canada, I guess.
Yeah.
Where are you from in Canada?
I'm from Nova Scotia, so we're really far east.
East.
Yeah. Right.
Did you ever see World War Z with Brad Pitt?
No.
I have seen that.
So at the end of the movie, they escape to Nova Scotia. Like that's where it's safe.
That's the Holy Land.
There's nothing out there.
Is that the Holy Land out there?
It's pretty sweet, but there's not much out there.
There's not many people doing the splits in Nova Scotia.
Not too many.
Not too many.
Yeah.
I must admit, so obviously consuming some of your content, I'm seeing you do these positions and like for anybody that hasn't seen your content that's listening, it's all I can think is like the end range of like a gymnast. So like full splits and everything, but then you've just jacked and you've got this quad meat and like hamstring and calf just like blowing out of your pants. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like it's fucking...
It's impressive.
It's mad.
No, there was a video, because I've watched your stuff a few months now, but there was a video I saw on Angus's story. No, he posted it with you, the collaboration on pendulum squats.
Yeah, that was fun.
I'm like, this guy's got fucking hams. Like, there was hanging.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. But, I think you had a point.
I'm just like so impressed, because like the general consensus, and it's obviously like an outdated idea, and Angus does a really good job of like challenging it. It's like weight training makes you stiff. Weight training locks you up and all of that, like the bodybuilders. But then you go back and look at like the Arnold era, and they're all squatting deep, doing huge range flies and all of this sort of stuff. It's like, well, I don't think it is weight training. I think it's just like this powerlifting bubble that we're all sort of stuck in with limited range of motion, locks you up because the goal of the task is to... So it's just awesome to see, because you've got a powerlifting background as well, don't you?
I mean, that's where everything really started for me.
Yep.
I was never really a gym guy, more of a sports guy. I was kind of the jackass when you do dry land. You're like fucking around, not really paying attention, but I blew my knee out playing rugby, and that actually, I was in the gym, just like all I could do. Got into powerlifting.
From like rehab perspective?
Yeah. So I was just like, life was the gym after that. Has been since day one, but powerlifting was the big push. Always drawn to, even as much as you look at powerlifting being the big stiff approach to training, it still is also the outside the box approach to training, because the gym I was in was, even around that time, still bubble wrapping everything. Don't bend your spine, don't move this way. I'm looking in the corner. I'm in this community gym where he's like the powerlifters and bodybuilders like colliding, all right? And there's just dust going everywhere, chalk, flying up, and these guys are just smashing their backs every day, just doing everything that everyone's saying not to do, and these guys don't give a fuck, and they're the strongest dudes. I'm like, I got to go over there.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I got to go.
So that was your first sort of introduction to, I would say, like a cohort of training style, or What sort of influence was that? Was that like a Westside strategy, or is it?
I did get into that.
Yeah.
Like, as I got into powerlifting, like, for the most part, I was like a kid back then. So just kind of going under the wings of some of these guys that were, I remember Chico was big in Nova Scotia back then. So I started getting a lot into that kind of stuff, and heavy volume lifting and that sort of thing. Went the Westside route because it was just fucking cool. Started getting into that.
How'd you go with the Westside route? Bands and chains?
Yeah, for sure. Like, a lot of the accommodated resistance stuff. But I think too, around that time for me as a coach, like, making that transition, like, I remember, like, bigger, faster, stronger was, become big.
Yep.
The industry was really switching into, like, this is how we're going to train athletes. We're going to do box squats, and speed pulls, and so it was like, everyone's buying into that, and like, that's what you're going to do as a strength coach now. You're going to teach everyone Westside barbell.
Vertical shins.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, before we started the podcast talking about it, like, a lot of the new ways I think now about it, it's like, yeah, this wasn't quite the way to go. There's a lot of good in there, right?
Yeah.
But, a lot of people still training that way are kind of fucking themselves up a little bit with regards to sport.
Yeah.
And carryover and that sort of thing. But, that's kind of where it all started, man, powerlifting.
And then you said so that was a knee injury that got you into the gym, and then you found sort of powerlifting, Westside influence, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. What then transitioned you into this newer, sort of more holistic range of strength, I guess?
Another injury,
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the powerlifting kind of lifestyle. Like, at the time I was competing, a lot of guys, were fighting through injuries and getting to the next competition and whatnot. But had a bicep rupture. And the bicep rupture really kind of set the stage to, like, I need to make a change, need to do something different. At the time, we had our first kid as well, so life was changing. I was like, what do I want to be kind of setting an example as for these kids? Like, so that's when everything started making a switch. Started looking for different ways to approach training. I wanted to move better. Gymnastics really stuck out, and I made that transition to try to learn gymnastics at the time. That really exposed my flexibility. I think that was when it was like, I want to make a change.
Yeah. Because this would be something that I would feel if I was to, not that I'm a stiff person. I've definitely got an extensive strength training background, and this would just be my bias. I've always been under the assumption that flexibility training doesn't, like, you can change something like acutely, but you're never really going to see huge changes, because you're talking about, like, when we discuss the hip, like the shape of the acetabulum and the femoral head and all of that sort of stuff. And, like, there's going to be like a restriction or a passive sort of genetic thing that's going to stop you from increasing range of motion. Before you found this gymnastics range sort of direction, would you have classified yourself as being a stiffer person, or were you always a little bit more flexible than the...
No, it was always kind of I had the same approach as you too.
Yeah.
And it was all like a genetic thing.
Like bone structure.
Yeah. Predisposed, disposed to it. And I never really had a serious approach to it. So it was, trying to figure out how to do that and make that transition. It required me to really uncover a lot of different unique approaches to training. Yeah. Like, I mean, obviously I did the yoga thing. Didn't work.
Why is that?
I mean, you got to have mobility to be doing yoga, right? It's kind of like
I listened to yes. Here we found out.
Wow, what have you done?
Bikram.
We went to Bikram once, and I remember Charlie was doing. I don't know what the pose was. It was one leg, tried to cross over one leg, and then tried to snake. Yeah. This is it.
Figure four.
Cross over the leg and then cross the arms.
And we're just holding this.
And just holding it.
I think I'm better at it now.
There was us three. We were in the back.
Going full Alex.
It was us three. We were sitting in the back corner, and the instructor could tell she was just looking at us the whole time, like, idiots.
You would have been so sweaty as well.
Oh,
it was disgustingly hot. Have you done Bikram yoga before?
Yep.
It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Oh, really?
Ever.
Yep.
Think about being in a sauna for 90 minutes. And then adding physical activity on top of that.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like my skin was like boiling, and you're not allowed to leave. That's the rule. You can't leave.
I've only done it once, but it was like an entry level one.
Yeah, this
and
was an
I
hour.
couldn't fill up my water bottle.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let you leave the room. They're like, if you leave, you're gone. I'm like, well,
Yeah, no.
I remember I was drenched, and then we had Carl Cox for this festival after. I had 1.5 beers, and I was hammered. That was because I was dehydrated. It
It was not a good idea.
But I was flexible, so we were all right. Sorted.
real zen.
That's it. Yeah.
Carl Cox.
That's it.
But something you said, I listened
Dislocate
to
your shoulder up.
something you said on a podcast. Listen to, I can't remember which one which it was, but you said that there's the idea that yoga will make you flexible is because naturally people who are flexible go and do yoga because they're good at it, and then there's this idea that that's what will sort your flexibility out, and that really caught my attention because I put myself in that stiff category too, and I'm like, well, is this a quality that I can actually train and get better at?
There's nothing wrong with yoga.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Just not the ideal starting point for someone that needs to make change.
Yeah.
But it's like associating weight loss with runners because they're thin.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that. I'm going to start running because I need to lose weight.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work.
And they get an Achilles tendon.
Yeah, they
up
get
the
all
thing.
these injuries, right? So it's a similar type thing. But yeah, I mean, that was start going to yoga. You start trying all these things. And I mean, gymnastics really exposes flexibility, and they train flexibility.
Yeah.
The way I train flexibility now or consider it, and it's just a form of strength training. You're just like, and that's, if you think about even the research that comes out to say, this is how you would improve range of motion through full ROM training. No one's really presented that as a thing. It's like training full ROM will improve flexibility. It's like, how? How would that look? How is that measured? What are this like performance indicators for someone? And that's where everyone gets lost. That's why we strength train or we run, because there's some kind of measurement of improvement.
There's an objective thing that we're looking to improve,
In my fitness journey, I've always hated feeling pigeonholed into one pursuit, whether it just be training for strength or just be training for hypertrophy. So my training has all been centered around training concurrent qualities. And when you first get into that, it is a little bit tough to work it out yourself. So if you do want to train like that, make sure you get in touch for coaching. You don't have to commit. We tape a phone call, chat about it, and see how that looks for you.
And that's what it was for me when those connections, I started making those connections, like as a coach, it was like, oh, I could really help a lot of people by like helping them figure that out or what that should look like. But I had to do it myself first.
Yeah, and I feel another lacking piece to it would be also like how you structure the actual training side of things, which obviously we're going to talk about today. But because like I've been a coach for 10 years and been around it and been quite involved in like learning and all of this sort of stuff. And flexibility has always just been like you tack it at the end or you do a little bit of dynamic stuff at the start, kick the hip around, fucking fire hydrants, even like the FRC stuff. I don't know. I'm assuming you've probably come across that, which is Dr. Adria Spina. Yeah. I think I've just absolutely butchered his name. Not the first name I've butchered on here though, so that's all right. But like that's how I've always viewed. I've never seen flexibility as a trainable modality that's objective and everything you've just said. What sort of markers and what sort of things are you looking for as outcomes mainly? Obviously more range, but
yeah, I think people you need to identify like what someone's working for. I mean, for the most part, we're looking to get into longer positions. So I'm big on like obviously something like a toe touch, learning to stand wide. Learning to stand.
Do you want to just bring that a little closer?
Yeah. Learning to stand in longer positions. Like this is a whole process that can be taught to someone. Organizing your strength training, minimal effective dose approach. I think the growth of mobility training and flexibility is like kind of gone to a point where it's a little watered down. Like how much do you need to do? Like that's where a lot of people are lost as well too, is like, do I need to train my joints for 2 hours to improve my flexibility, or is that like something I really have to focus on? So there's a lot of that as well, as like getting someone to just understand that you don't need to do as much work either. It's the same as strength training. I've only really trained even for splits once a week, like
really,
you know, at the very most 3 times a week when I was leading up to certain breakthroughs. But if you're doing it right, your strength training, it's just like powerlifting. You need to rest and recover and all the same kind of principles.
Yeah, which makes complete sense.
Well, it seems like as a quality strength, you're structuring a program aiming to progressively overload it, recover, fatigue management. All these principles are present there, but it seems like the lacking, I guess, principle for something like yoga, where it's random poses. You go there once a week. It's not as directed.
Right.
it seems like it would make sense that you're lacking those changes from that. Whereas what you're finding is, or even with splits, is there a set of variables that you're progressing? Is it like the length of the hold? Are you trying to be more active in that end range? Like, are those different variables that you would progress, like load in the gym with the program? Yeah. So how would you approach it if you're getting someone splits once a week? That's what they wanted to work towards.
Yeah.
What are the variables that you're looking to progress from a week-to-week basis?
So stance is a big one. The wide stance and long stance of a front split or a side split, if we're talking about split specifically. So it's kind of like a sumo stance position or a long lunge, but with more of like a negative shin angle. You're progressing someone over time in that shape. Obviously, you can add variables to that like load. And this is the other thing that's not identified really well for a lot of people is like when you're holding a stretch, what kind of like reserve outcomes are we looking for? Similar to like you would on an RPE scale for lifting. So like what's an 8 out of 10 on a stretch look like, right? It's like, how do you teach someone to approach a reserve on a stretch? Whereas most people will go 10 out of 10 right away, and that's the barrier. Or they, within a set, don't know how to progressively move themselves to a threshold. So those are like the important variables that you want to lay out right away. Is the difference between just doing reps versus like being in a static position. So that's something I actually have an RPE chart for stretching. It's a very meathead looking stretching chart. So it's like just says more along the lines like within an 8, there should feel like there's this much time that you can still hold for, or at least you're giving someone that kind of indication so that they can ramp themselves within whatever is prescribed. So yeah, definitely something that you kind of see like where those holes are. And it's not that we have to like reinvent the wheel. We just need to give people those markers of success. And that's what was lacking for me with flexibility training is like, I had to start understanding what I was like working for. Like, how am I actually, like, what kind of things should I be working on, or what are some markers of success? And that's why most people go right for something big, like a splits, because they just don't, you have zero and there's no identification.
There's nothing in the middle. Yeah. That's where my brain goes.
Yeah. So it's
I
like,
just go to the end ranges.
Yeah. Like that's where a lot of people will go and take that journey and figure it out, as I did along the way. And it takes a lot of trial and error, long time. But that my goal as like a coach and coming back with a lot of the range of strength stuff has been to try to identify like what are the basics, like how much is a good amount of range of motion that you would want to feel like you can just still kind of go do whatever you want to do, and you can still integrate it, not have to do 2 hours of range work. You know what I mean? That's, I think, where a lot of people need help.
Yeah. You go. I was going to ask a question related to you.
Ask me first.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you feel, because you are, of the three of us, you're the stiffest malaka here by a mile.
Yeah.
But do you feel restricted in the gym, even in like things like split squats, or do you feel that your flexibility? Yeah.
Like a Bulgarian split squat, like I feel the trailing leg is very stiff, very jacked up. But I think I fall down in that category of I've trained 3 very specific lifts for a very long time that are all about reducing range to lift as much weight as possible. So it makes sense that I'm stiff and jacked up in certain spots. Yep. My question, the answer is yes to that. My question was, would if you got me as someone like me as a client, do you think you'd be confident that I'd be able to get in these split positions eventually?
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
You need to be given the right constraints.
Yeah, obviously.
Setting up a position and understanding what like we're asking of the body. Because that's another whole thing there too, is like just telling someone to do a split squat versus setting it up in such a way where they get feedback within the setup itself of what we're expecting from the body. Yeah. It can save a lot of time. And then there's this whole like what I call the skill of stretching. It's like an actual skill, being in a stretch, knowing what you're working for, even just like setting up a stretch in a way that's like accessible for someone who's really stiff. Like I shared a couch stretch recently on an incline bench versus everyone's doing a couch stretch in this deep kneeling position. It's like not a lot of people can do that. So it's like you got to go that extra mile to say like, how can you make stretching more accessible for someone so they can understand it and spend time.
There's also like a level of, I know, getting into certain stretches, it's like it's very uncomfortable. So it's like you don't want to just plug someone straight in there and they're in this huge amount of discomfort.
I've done that.
Yeah, you've done that. It's not going to be very motivating to come back and
I
do
was
it.
just going to say, I've just had a flashback when I was like first started personal training, but like having like 45-year-old mums, and I would just, because I was on the Cali Starrett Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
And I would just jam them into the like couch stretches, and they'll be like, I feel it like it hurts. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Like, and just like,
breathe. Don't make the pain face.
like
Just
breathe
don't make
into it. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we've got 40. I was like timing their stretches and
Yeah.
shit. Like, I would have just been, but it makes so much sense. Like,
Well, it's like the 90-90s, like the most popular
the little
hip rotation position.
Yeah.
No one can sit in 90-90.
Yeah.
The only people that can are these ones that share the tutorials. And you start coaching, you're like, fuck. All right.
You've got your regressions for all those stretches.
Yeah, you can spend time in your own kind of research trying to figure out, like when you start becoming, I consider myself a flexibility coach, you start getting in that space of like, I'm working with a guy right now, he's a power lifter, and he's like, can't stretch his hamstring. Like, you can't even get in it. So it's like we're laying on our backs. Like, we're just like troubleshooting a lot of, and now it's like he's having some wins. So it's like step one is like, how can I make it effective for this person, right? And I think that's just how you improve any kind of, if you were to call it a system, whatever. It's just like through implementing it with a big audience of people and figuring out like, what scenarios.
I kind of regress it.
Yeah. So another, I think, flexibility myth, and I think science is probably like this probably last 10 years. Science would tell us that flexibility training wouldn't really do much from an injury prevention or like a pain management standpoint.
Yeah.
But what's your anecdote of actually training it properly with what it sounds like as athletes and all of that sort of stuff? Have you found a different?
Well, I mean, nothing prevents injury.
Yeah, not prevention, but like, are you finding like that powerlifter that they're actually having great success and they're feeling a lot better and actually,
I think improvement of like subjective experience in gym and performance.
Absolutely. And like for me, most of my stuff isn't much stretching actually. Like if you look at it, people get into it, they're usually like, oh, we're not actually doing a lot of stretching, but it's finding ways to give someone a flashlight into a cave is what I always say. It's like when and why we would use a stretch for someone that hasn't been there versus like hammering them down with load or, using those kind of approaches. I think that's like where you can have wins, actually putting someone in an end range, and why something maybe more passive specific would be helpful for someone who has never figured out how to even make sense of that end range.
Yeah.
So the lights haven't even been
they've
switched
never
on.
even been there.
Yeah. So it's like, that's a huge win for people understanding how to just reorganize their strength training, which it's not too hard when you start looking at what we're doing for accessory work. It's like if we need to improve the range and pick some performance indicators on what that should look like, for the power lifters, for the most part, it's just about shifting around some of that accessory work.
Yeah.
So you can do all your big work still. We're just learning how to move into longer positions and at least measure the success of that as we're doing it.
Yeah. So you're mainly adjusting accessory-based stuff and maybe looking to access positions under load and then training through load there.
And then do that for a little while.
Yeah, and actually give yourself time. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that would be another thing. Like, again, I was when I had the Cali Starrett, real passive, like just get a band and pull you. It would be interesting to actually get your views on all that stuff as well. But like using distractions, hip distractions and all of that. It's very passive. It's very much like this band is just going to pull you in a position and just resist the urge to fall over, really. And I remember going through that, and then the FRC stuff was a lot more like, oh, this is actually like find those positions, but then learn to actively control them. But again, it was unloaded. I have never seen the way that you attack it, which is there's one where you're doing like a pancake stretch,
right,
and you've got a band behind you, and you're pushing into the band as you flatten down. It's like an active pancake stretch,
resisting the stretch.
Yeah, resisted stretch. I've never seen that next part of the puzzle. And so it'd be interesting. What are your views on like the really passive, like Cali Starrett, banded?
I mean, that stuff's good, like passive stretching, but it's, again, a lot of times for individuals, like not having at that very low level a way to progress to something a little more intense. So even with something like a resisted pancake, we're still applying the principles that we would be in a passive stretch, but we have some constraints that give us feedback on what it's like to contract the short side, and it's a little more intense.
Yeah.
And it's a way. So, I mean, it's still something I think we just need to figure out how that looks or how we can think about prescribing that. But most of the advanced stuff is still the same kind of protocol. This, like, I guess all that different acronyms and shit that start to come up, whereas mobility becomes the coin term, and as we think that, you know, all these different ways of doing it are all the same. It's all the same. It's just like
it's just a continuum.
we do it harder, or we use this acronym. It's all the same shit. We're still learning to contract on either side of the joint, which we're doing when we strength train anyway, and then we can just get better at using constraints, especially for really restricted individuals who, when they sit in the stretch, don't feel shit. Yeah. And that's the other thing too. It's like, I don't even feel anything. Like, I'm just sitting here. I can't even make sense of what's happening. Yeah. How can I help that person make sense of a movement? So I still think there's maybe just work to be done on that sense where, you know, how do we put the right constraints in for someone who, if you assist them in a stretch, still don't feel shit. They can't make sense of it, versus getting them to learn how to switch the tissue on that actually moves them into a stretch. Right? Yeah. So I still think, there's a lot of work to do on that sense, but I mean, I've always related everything that I do with flexibility to big positions. Just I think as we do with strength training, it's like squat, you know, you kind of relate a lot of lower body movements around that when you're thinking. So splits is always like some kind of shape or big position that I can layer down from. I can just think about like how I can make this person find progress. Doesn't have to be a pancake, but at least from that base type of position, or whatever it's asking of you.
Like an archetype. Like you're sort of like, you got a gold standard you're working towards.
Like a back bridge. Maybe not everyone needs. Maybe not everyone needs to know how to do a back bridge, but spine extension. How do we train that? How do we teach people to, you know, like powerlifters, how could they even benefit from that?
This is something that so I listened to your, it was either called Fundamental Basics. Yep. It was just like a solo episode on your podcast, and you were talking about like the 6 basic it's kind of principles, but they're kind of the things that you're looking for. And one of them that you were discussing, and I was thinking you again, how this might help you with some of that neural neck pain and stuff. But you were saying that once you learned how to do a back bridge, you'd felt your upper back and like the rhomboids, lower traps, and all of those sort of like muscles that we look for to position and hold the scaps and really provide the foundation for a big bench press. But it wasn't until you learned how to do that stuff that you actually felt better in the position for powerlifting.
Yeah, you could make sense of like how to actually do things back there.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, the basics is more so of like you could think of it as like the 6 things that are kind of missing when we talk about how everyone trains, you know, and just approaches training in general. It's usually those 6 things, like the wide stance, long stance, kind of. Yep. No one trains those. Hanging.
That was the other one, yeah.
Capsule rotation, capsule strength, how to actually measure that is like something you can train for.
The other one was groundfulness.
Groundfulness, being on the ground.
Like being on the ground and not being in pain, like just kneeling or like sitting with your legs crossed. Because I know I've lost all of that.
Which is just the approach there is that's a passive position. So if you and I were to strength train around a grounded position, we would find space in that. So we could strength train a Seiza pose.
Yeah, like on your heels.
Yeah, so then you got like baseline measurements of how to actually get someone relaxing on the ground.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of a different way of thinking about it is like, like how would you help someone actually get good at just relaxing on the ground or just like kneeling down in these positions without just hammering those positions? It's like, well, we can train the layers down a little bit.
Yeah.
Teach them how to be in these end ranges.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I'm really. We're going to film a video at the end of today after.
Get me into a
push Charlie into the splits.
Just push him. I want to rip his adductors.
back bridge.
Yeah. So it's literally like what you would expect, like a kid. They literally just fucking crawl back there, like they're on their and they're arched and.
But probably not a good starting point.
Not a good starting point. What would a progression to get? Let's say old Stiff McGee over here. How do we get him there?
Well, I mean, we could start introducing some yoga-based type things like cobra poses or whatever when you're starting to like extend from the ground. Yeah. But the hanging cobra is basically a bridge shape. You can start introducing people to that right away. So you're hanging and your trunk is bent back. It's like a hanging back bend. Yeah. It's like still.
Feet at the back.
Yeah.
I was doing this last week. Yeah. But I said to you, I said, this feels good. And I was hanging and I was like putting my heels up to my ass. So I was getting that extension. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this feels really good.
Yeah. So it's an assisted stretch.
Yeah. It's gravity assisted. Yeah.
Yeah. We took a picture of that and flipped it around and it would be a bridge, right? So then we're actually
started
putting you in a bridge position.
So that'd be the sort of one of the regressions you would use to build up to a back
really
bridge.
Like that one. I use that with a lot of people, just getting them because you can see that shape change over time. and train the layers around it. So they're given some markers of success, and they don't feel the back bridge is really specific. You're getting upside down. You got to actually want to do a back bridge in a way, but it's good buy-in. Like after someone has success there, they're kind of like, maybe I'll go for a bridge. Right?
Yeah. I want to do a bridge.
Yeah. It is cool. It was hard. I built to a bridge on the ground with straight legs and a nice spine. Like I wasn't just dumped in. Like it was fucking hardest thing I've ever done.
Really?
So I know that lately I've been feeling a little bit burnt out with powerlifting. So my plan is to take 2023 off and dabble in some other fitness endeavors. If you're feeling like me and you're feeling a little bit burnt out, but do want to return to powerlifting later on down the track, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, or 24 months, hit me up for coaching. Love to work with you.
I've done like a few. I got to a point where I was like doing one arm from the ground, and then like I was trying to learn how to do a kick over, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to move on from this now. Like started getting a little.
Could you do like you could just hop into a back bridge now?
I probably could. I haven't trained that like as much lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd even like periodize the positions and movements you're working towards.
Yeah, for sure. Plan that out. Always keep layers. That's the thing too. From that experience, there's always layers of back bending in my training. So if you were to look at my training now, you'd probably be like, oh, okay, I see some bridge stuff in here, but it's not like you're training.
It's some regress patterns or some loaded stuff that will allow you to get back there if you needed to. Yeah, that's it's just structured training.
That's the key, right? Like you don't. Once you have those experiences and you understand what you're working for, those layers are always in your training. That's like the basics, right?
With someone like myself now, I feel like I'd be a good archetype for a lot of the listeners out there that, again, powerlifting, stiff, probably listening to you going, what the hell's going on? To get to a back bridge position, how much time do you need to spend with? So is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it like, and obviously it's going to vary depending on the person.
Give yourself a year for sure.
So it is quite a time.
That's not that long.
Oh, it's not that long, but it's not 2 weeks.
No, for sure. Because I mean that's how it's presented.
Always looking
right?
for the quick fix.
And that's the shitty thing too, is it's always presented like fix your range in like 30 days or some shit. And I've done some experimental programming, like we did a 30-day sprint one time, and it was like these short circuits, just getting people building a habit. So it was more of like a habit builder. Like get yourself back into the habit of actually doing some range work. Yeah. But seeing long-term change, like for the most part, people should give themselves a year, because you also want to just like understand the systems around it, like how you would bring that back into training and always have, like, I think that's a bigger part of it than just like seeing an improvement. Yeah. It's like taking that experience, digesting it, and then using it for the rest of your life. And you actually understand how to use it. That's, I think, more worth it than just to get into a bridge. Yeah. But
actually applying it. Yeah. And learning when to apply it. So back to the six things. The other one you had was hanging. Yeah. And I want to discuss this monkey press that I've been seeing flying around. So one thing you said in the podcast was that I think it was something to do with the army. You were working with people, you were in the army or something.
I was a PT for the Canadian military for over 10 years.
And you were saying that there was all these jacked people and no one could hold themselves.
Well, one of the number one injuries for special forces in the military is elbow injuries from hanging on ropes in helicopters and stuff. Oh. Yeah. No one can hang on a bar. Like no one trains. So that was always a test that we would administer, and we would always build new cadets and stuff up to 60-second passive hangs. But from a flexibility perspective now as well, a passive hang, if someone can't passive hang, for one, we're seeing that they improve just their endurance to do that. But you'll usually see someone really jacked up with like their shoulders way down here, and then like over time you start seeing a shape change. And like the tissue can actually relax.
Yeah, the lat lets go.
Shoulders can start coming up, and like then it's like, okay, because the hang is a loaded stretch. We're hanging on a bar. You're actually loading your lats and that all those tissue being stretched, and then you can actually see it change. So, and there's so many ways you can build off of it, right?
Yeah,
monkey press.
The monkey press.
So I usually build people to one arm hangs.
Yeah,
Do you put anything like barbells in the back of their knees?
To weigh them up?
Or? Yeah, to weigh them like as you progress.
You could do that. The hanging searcher.
Hanging searcher.
Will did that.
He does his chin-ups like that. So I was wondering.
Yeah. Is that how he loads his chin-ups?
That's how he loads his chin-ups.
In an active hamstring hold.
Yeah, with the barbell. He does a zercher, a lower body zercher.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking that like when we're talking about the bridging stuff too, that'd be like progressing that as well. So is that like you then load? That's what I was actually going to ask you before, so my brain's gone a million miles an hour. How do you start to load some of these things up?
Had that creatine.
You can load most people right away. Right. That's the other thing too, is like, and this is where there's that disconnect when someone's like in a stretch without any constraint. like you got to give them something that allows them to understand how to be there or provides assistance. So at the start, loading is an assistance mechanism for a stretch. So you can actually feel like it pushes you deeper, or it helps you sit in the position better. Like even just like a seiza, if you can't sit with your heels down, if I got you to hold some weight, it would be more of a loaded stretch, right? Like we would find ways to make it more of a constraint than just loading it. And then as you get better at it, you can think of building someone up in setting some kind of performance indicator on it, like 50% body weight or whatever it is, right?
Yep. Have you found with training, like some of these more strength athletes, with these improvements in range of motion, that their strength has improved because of now the length through the muscle potentially? Have you seen that with any of your clients?
I have for people that want to improve strength through more range.
Yep.
Like someone that wants to, like I specialize a lot in squatting.
Yep.
That's one of my it's kind of special areas to coach, and people will come to me to try to get ass to grass squats.
Yep.
That we'll see that stuff improve, like just by doing some kind of special coaching around it, and you can see them improving full ROM, getting better at squatting. If we're talking about like folding as a separate thing, I mean, most people don't know what they're working for. Deadlift or powerlifters in general can find themselves just like feeling like they can get in better positions. So if you can get in a better position, the outcome's usually going to be better.
Yep.
You're not feeling as fucked up when you're
I
there.
feel like for the application in accessory training and like actually going through more range of motion, not feeling like those passive ends to like a split squat or something where you can actually actively hold and control the rebound out, like all of that sort of stuff. It makes complete sense why you would. Yeah.
It's like, for me, like someone put a question in one of our groups about like getting into a squat position a bit better. And I've just started getting into more like loaded stretching with my own program. By loaded stretching, I'm doing like full range dips.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a smart ass and just comment back. I'm like, I just do dips. But I feel like it just made sense. You know what I mean?
You could layer a dip.
What's that, sorry?
You could layer a dip position, right?
What do you mean by layer a dip position?
Well, like you could get someone with like into shoulder extension, doing range work, and just even slowly doing negatives or holding the static bottom position, like with some assistance.
Yeah. So I used a fuckload of band tension.
Yeah.
Me. So I could dip like the shit range just slightly below, probably bang out a set of 20 like standard. But the end range ones, like I was in significant pain the first time I tried to do it unloaded. So the band tension, although as like a strength stimulus, it did absolutely zero for me. Like I felt like a crazy stretch, but it was that regressed point that allowed me to get to it. And now subjectively, I don't know, I feel like this is, to me, just judging by what you're saying, like if you had a powerlifter or someone like that, it's tweaking the accessory movements in those ways. So it is still like a strength stimulus in a way, but you're layering in that flexibility stimulus. Is that a way, like I'm just using the dip as an example because that's how I'm painting that picture. Is that practically how you would do that for someone that you're coaching?
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
different movements.
Absolutely. That's what they need to know anyway to stick with it. Like they need to know what they're working for. And it needs to not interfere with life.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's the hardest part is like most people when it's time like to start doing stuff, you still got to live your life and have time for other things. And if it's like, it's this way or nothing, like you got to find a middle ground. Like you want someone to, if they're doing something, right, you can add more over time once they realize how good this is. But step one is just like start doing the workouts and just like actually committing to it, right?
And this is, I think you alluded to it, and I heard it into a podcast as well. It's like it's not these 2-3 hour stretch sessions. It's almost like micro dosed through accessory work, and that is the more like active work that you would find, and then you would do some longer static stuff, and it's like it's just injected everywhere, as opposed to like, hey, I've got these 4 exercises and I'm going to ram you into splits in 3 months.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just all drip fed, and that's how you find adherence. Because I know, me personally, if I had 4 stretches to do and just those 4 stretches, my adherence, maybe if my clients are hearing this, fucking just do your shit. But like for me, I'd be like,
you'd stick to it.
Yeah, I'd stick to it a lot more if it was almost like masked. In a way.
It's like blending the veggies up in the soup.
Yeah,
like
that's
in the bolognese.
Just blend
That's
everything.
what we do with the kids.
Yeah,
Spinach.
exactly. Yeah,
You put spinach in there.
You hide
It's
it. You hide it in there.
That's what I do with myself.
Well, and I think that's
just blend everything.
drink it.
We do it with any training stimulus, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. You meet them where they're at. You were saying it just then. You meet them where you're at. I really like the idea of how it's there's objective reasons for it, and like from the powerlifting, like Charlie's thing, it's like, well, we're trying to improve this position for bench or whatever it would be.
Feeling better.
Yeah,
I know, because I like what Jamie alluded to before. I get a lot of like neural neck rib stuff going on, especially with bench being in that like extended posture. That's why I was hyper fixated on the back bridge, because I'm like, as soon as I heard I'm like, fix me. But yeah, it's, if I feel better, because I know definitely when I'm in a bit more pain, it's like, I don't want to train. I know it's going to piss it off. So if I feel better, I'm probably going to train harder.
Yeah.
And my want to train is going to be higher. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's cool. It's all. I'm enjoying diving into these new ideas a little bit, because we're probably similar to Jamie. Like, I have mobility, like flexibility. It's not something that you really train for or push for or can't really help you. And then it's cool to see these ideas being pushed.
I know we chatted a little bit off air, but we definitely came through like a PRI lens, where like a very orientation focused sort of idea to range of motion. It's just like scapular position relative to rib cage, or pelvis relative to femur, and then you can feed it anywhere out from there. And it's this idea that you could literally just like alter the relative position of the pelvis, and then all of a sudden we access, we just gained 20 degrees of internal rotation. Yeah. But the issue with that stuff is that it's always so passive, and it's always just untrainable. And there was never an idea for us of how can we actually push this thing further. And we've kind of just sort of fell away from it. We've definitely still used the orientation lens. Yeah. But I think after this conversation, having a way in which we could just sprinkle it into training and accessories, I think could really help a lot of people that. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I've gone like this year, last 2 years, I've gone down the PRI rabbit hole. And same thing, trying to figure out how can I feed some of this into what I'm doing now to help people even further. And for the most part, it's where I've been using it too, from the orientation kind of perspective of it.
Because I know we saw immediate improvements in people's like being able to touch their toes through like full exhales. Yeah. So full exhales,
mass back,
more
position
abs,
of the skeleton.
Yeah.
Which helps a ton too as a flexibility coach.
Yeah. So
what you end up, or even when I started, some of the coaches at the time that were helping me were just kind of hammering me into these ranges. And then I like go through that kind of lens, and I'm like, even through the workshops this weekend, being able to teach people position of the skeleton and how to like move their center of mass, it's huge.
Center of mass is massive.
Yeah. And then you start adding layers of flexibility work in there, and then it's just like they're smashing the floor with their hands
straight away.
Right away. It's like, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You just know how to move your bones and shit, right?
Yeah.
And even like we just say with squats, you can get people like squatting deeper instantly just from like exhale and an anterior load. Yeah. Get the center of mass back. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. Was this all self-taught, or like you just like trial and error and fumbling your way, or did you have mentors, or is there like are there books, are there resources? Like
for sure. Yep, definitely. So like the first systems I started getting into that really made sense to me and it helped me dilute a lot of like the shit was Coach Summers' gymnastic bodies. I don't know if you're familiar with that. He's just like, developed systems for training and introducing gymnastics. Yep. But he was the first guy that I saw integrate mobility training within a session that was kind of moving towards shapes, and it was strength training. And I was like, oh fuck, like this is what mobility training needs to look like. It's just strength training. So like a lot of time spent with him. I did a lot of his seminars at the time when he was touring around and doing a lot. He brought flexibility systems into what he was doing, like more deep stretching, which led me to find Kit Lachlan, who is based in Australia. And he had brought him in to develop these more specific stretching type areas. And that got me into Kit's work. He's got like a library of stuff under stretch therapy, and it really focuses on adult flexibility. Like he really isolates like working with an adult body that hasn't moved before. So I spent a lot of time in his stuff. Thomas Kerr's Stretching Scientifically. That's probably the Bible for anyone like just wanting to read more about stretching and
Stretching Scientifically.
Yeah. There's 4 editions of it. The first one's kind of like the Bible, and then he had to like, had to be revised and edited a few times, but a lot of great ideas that are still current today. Like if you were to go look at like what FRC was doing, it's all in that book. It's all the same stuff, like different kind of contraction types and what you're working for. And he was a very open-minded guy where it was all like, you got to experiment with all these different things and these approaches. but he was had a big impact on me when I was getting into his stuff. Dan Van Zant, Flexibility Research. He actually offers like a coaching certification for flexibility. Really good person to be kind of just following with regards to the research. He identifies what's good, what's bad. Like if any of the research that comes out against stretching, he can kind of relate it back to the, you know, the research that's, you know, been proven with it, like that it's not. So yeah, like a lot of those guys have been really big influences on me. More recently with the old time strongman kind of stuff, James Fuller, strongman archaeology, he's helped me really dive hard into that stuff, which that was like when you've gone that far in the flexibility rabbit hole and you start coming back to strength, you're thinking a little bit more along the lines of like, what could strength training look like outside of the box, again, with flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I started going a lot harder into that stuff and seeing how that could be brought back and with a different way of looking.
Yeah. And I think this is where I see a lot of I think this is the bridge to like the odd lifts. Like
Well, I feel like the odd lift and the flexibility training and all this, it's like this whole, and everyone's, especially Angus now, like the whole it seems like the whole anti-fragile thing taken to that end degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's strength through end range and doing these sick, what is it, Steinborns, like full lateral flexion in to positions and like, what do they do? Like world's strongest man, like stupid weights, like 200 plus kilos or whatever. And getting into position, like it just seems like that. And for such a industry that's like, oh, if your glutes are weak, you're gonna break your back. I think it's really fucking empowering for people. And it seems like I don't know what do you feel your motivation is? Because for me now with training, like I don't want to be a pro athlete like I did when I was younger. I just want to do sick shit for the fuck of it. Like that's the way I look at it. Like for you, like what drew you to that outside of just like flexibility, you know?
Well, just like the whole strength approach to things. I think at the end of the day, we're always looking for pursuits of strength. It makes us better, stronger humans, more confident. Like, and I think that shit, bringing it back through the lens of like, it's okay to do this stuff. Like we're highly adaptable. We can be exposed to flexion in different ways. And then again, if you're smart about it, you can break them down and present things like we had Eugene yesterday was doing Steinborn taps, and we were just like, you know, slowly building him into like thinking about these movements. So it's just like offers, I think, strength to the everyday athlete where, I mean, even myself growing up into it, you're really limited to this systematic approach to training, which is still very young. We're kind of really pigeonholed into this way of using Bulgarian training systems that have only been around for 80 years or so, and they're really specific to, performance enhancing drugs and, like the pursuit of a high performing strength that I don't think is very accessible for everyday people that just want to go out, be strong, do some cool shit, move better. And I think that the old time stuff offers that.
Yeah. Because I find it fascinating. I saw you. So how was your time with Eugene actually at the Mega Factory there?
Yeah, it was great. We got into a lot of fun stuff, and he's keen to like explore this stuff and understand it. And I think that's all the conversations we had has always been like why would this be beneficial, and like, or is it just like you're just doing it for fun?
Yeah,
it's like no, it's like trying to break it down so people can understand why it might be beneficial to them.
Yeah, because in the standard like not powerlifts, but the standard like squat pattern, hinge pattern, split squat pattern, he would be somebody that most people would deem he's quite mobile, and quite he can access all of those ranges quite comfortably and train them, and he trains through full range. How did he go with some of the stuff you would take? I saw you had him on an incline bench with his leg up, training him like a front split or something. How'd he go with that?
Yeah, it was good. He's open to it. Some of the odd lifts were like, we were just trying to find ways to set it up so that he could play with it with lighter weight and stuff. But no, he did really well with it. It's got some, I told him to stop using the straps for a little bit so he could hang on to some weight with his hand.
Yeah.
You start getting into one hand lifts. Like that's the bronze era, 1900s to the 1930s. Like that era was when, like that was kind of the end of the grip strength athlete. If you read back to like how a lot of it started changing in the 1950s, like the silver era started bringing in strap training, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just like you see, we went from being able to do a lot of these impressive lifts with one hand to then kind of impressive squats, impressive press. Like it kind of made that powerlifting switch a little bit. So a lot of this stuff really exposes your grip strength, like to the point where you're like, I can't hang on to this weight with one hand. It's like, you know, so I mean, these are really nice tools you can think about, maybe just not deadlifting heavy with 2 hands, but just like, again, accessory work might be some heavy one-hand lifts.
Yeah.
These varieties that can.
I've seen you do one-arm barbell snatches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the other thing they did too? Everything was, it's all one-hand stuff. So the one-hand snatch, one-hand clean and jerk was almost, some of them were just as strong as
One-arm clean and jerk. How the fuck does that work?
Yeah.
How do you?
They would underhand grip it and they would clean it up
To their chest.
like 300 pounds. So there was like this,
Center of a barbell.
yeah. There was a way they would do it. They would drive the elbow into the hip. So they would,
Oh, and sort of like pop it
but
up.
still, it was
It's
underhand.
140. There's a point there where you.
There's a moment arm there.
And then they would dip underneath the weight with one hand.
300 pounds, so about 130 kilos. Holy shit.
Crazy stuff, man. They would do some crazy shit. And it was before they even knew that there were any rules. So
Yeah.
they just did it, and they would make up things as they went. How do we get a bar in the back? There's no squat racks. Oh, we're going to tip it over.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
But you'll tear your bicep to a mixed grip.
Exactly.
Weak glutes. You got to do those little sideline clams. That will sort you out.
Yeah.
Do you know this conversation? We need to clear some floor space. You know this Step Brothers thing where they clean their room out. Yeah, we need to do that downstairs. You need room for activities.
Yeah, we'll pull a few of the combo
The
racks out
mixed
for the
grip
day.
thing kills me. Just and it kills.
Oh, the asymmetries.
It kills me because it's still so prevalent in just so many people.
Yeah.
And it's the first thing I hear from, like, I get new athletes. It's like, oh, I'm worried about like imbalances in strength and stuff. And I'm like, this is not going to do anything to you. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
How do we get that message across to people? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, reverse grip. I've been training reverse grip deadlifts with both hands.
Yep.
That's been fun.
Yep.
What have you got that up to?
I've been repping 4 plates with that. Pretty
180.
good.
Wow.
Reverse.
I mean, when I hurt my elbow too, I mean, the doctor, he was cool as hell. Did a great job. They did an endo button procedure, which is like when they put the steel plate down, it's supposed to be quite strong. But he was like, you'll never do any of that shit again. Like, you know, using tools for long periods of time is going to be hard.
Classic doctor.
You know, like I'm just like, fuck. Like,
Here's the end of your life.
so,
Into your life.
I've fixed you, but you can't do anything
Yeah.
ever again.
feel
Bad
like,
luck.
yeah.
so I mean, a lot of that stuff now, like even just that old way of training and like train your fucking biceps and train them really hard. You start following a lot of these guys that are still doing this stuff. And it just got fucking insane bicep strength. Insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Double underhand.
I think we should
Double
max out.
I really wish.
I know my grip
Feels
strength.
really nice, man. It does feel
I
really
really
nice.
wish I didn't have nationals next week.
I reckon just can it. Or
No, hey.
I reckon just double underhand your sumo
Nah,
on the
I'm
day.
gonna-
Just fuck with it.
We could do some cleans.
We'll do some cleans. I got to squat
One-hand
later,
cleans.
but it will be right.
One,
Fuck 'em.
one hand, underhand.
it.
Yeah.
Robust.
We'll-
I know
Real
my grip
robust.
strength would be trash.
Yeah.
Like all the metrics you're talking about, like one arm hang, no way.
No, you can.
60
Chalk.
second
You gotta
hang,
chalk.
no chance.
You can do it with chalk.
You'd be able to do a
reckon?
60-second hang.
Yeah,
You reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. These guys were off no train when we did that challenge. People were doing 2 minutes, 90 seconds.
Wait,
we did
I
90 seconds.
45
There's
second
strategies
hang.
to that too. They kind of shift side to side a little bit too.
Oh,
But
do
it just
they?
has to be passive dead.
Yeah. Okay.
Just I don't know.
Wait,
I know some guys that do those grip challenges stuff. Like when you watch their stuff, they kind of like talk about how they shift over to rest.
load one hand more.
and then they
rest
shift
the
over
other
the other
hand.
side. Yeah.
And then I found with the one hand thing, when I did it with no chalk, I couldn't hang. As soon as we put chalk on, I could hang one handed.
And then we'll hit the monkey press.
Monkey
Yeah, let's
press.
do some monkey press. I've been wanting to smash that ever since we did those. Someone sent me an old guy. I can't find the account. He's like in his late 60s or something. He's got an account on Instagram somewhere where he just does that a lot for the most part. He's in his backyard. He's smashing 30 plus kilos just for reps, like nothing. And so like I was like so keen to try that. We got to Ghetto. We just got into it. And it was so funny because we were starting to put rules. It became this like measurement of like a
Game.
test. We were like, you got to tap the bar. It doesn't count. I tapped the bar. And we were figuring out how to like get the most amount of weight. Will Rettelli, he did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, it didn't count. You didn't tap the bar. And he also kipped it up. But then we started talking about the kip, and I was like, that's actually a fucking good idea.
Yeah.
Get some
We love
crazy
calling
weight up.
people out, so if you want to call out Will properly, you can send him a dagger down the camera there if you want to call him out.
You got to tap the fucking bar. Will.
Yeah, it's cool. All these people, because we've been diving into his stuff as well. I'm really breaking out of the powerlifting lenses.
Yeah.
I'm going through that journey. transformative.
It's just like, I mean, I'm getting to a point now where my powerlifting numbers I'm lighter than I was too, and I'm creeping up to like the ratios that I was pulling back then with like no belt and shit. I'm like, what was I doing? Like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
It's just
What were your numbers at the peak of it?
at the peak, equipped, I could squat 300 kilos.
So you went
You were
full
proper.
equipped. You were proper
Well,
Westside.
this was before
Vertical
This was
shins.
before Raw. So Raw really got big in Canada in like 2014.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was like there was a category where it was like everyone is Raw, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, prior to that, there were all these other rules, but like my first powerlifting competition, they were like, you got to get a suit, you got to find a suit and shirt.
It's
Like,
crazy how recent that time actually was. It was only before. I think JP was saying the first Raw Nationals, first Raw Worlds was 2013.
yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it's not even 10 years ago.
No.
Like, and you think about how big Raw lifting is. Before that, there would be people out here that are currently competing that would have no idea what equipped lifting is. They'd have no idea, and it was only 10 years ago that it was the only way to do it. So 300 kilo squat.
180 in a bench shirt.
Yep.
On a bench.
4 wheels.
Bench. What's 618? 280 deadlift, sumo. I was a terrible deadlifter, man.
Nah.
Explains why.
Yeah.
But no, and it was all like, I wasn't even good in equipment either. I'd say I definitely didn't max out. Like, I started training out of this gym in Prince Edward Island, and they were producing all the big guys at the time from the province. They were just fucking nuts. There was some crazy shit going on there, man.
That era of powerlifting was crazy.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, do you feel like you got, because I know with the equipment you've got to really like it's
need a
quite
team.
technical to get the most out of it. Did you feel like you even got close to getting the most out of it?
Not really.
Nah.
Especially not on the bench.
Yeah.
I just never had that fear factor, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you got to add another 100 pounds to your bench so we can get this to your chest. And I was like, I'd rather wear a looser shirt, man. And you see guys, like, you're there when shit's going wrong, and it's, oh yeah, just sway it on. I was like, this is
Yeah, because it
nuts.
literally it like preloads and it can just go like swing, and the bar's gone. See you later.
And the boys are just like out in Prince Edward Island, just a bunch of farmers. They're just like, yeah, you just kind of like fucking, it's like 600 pounds.
You got to have like
Holy
6
shit.
spotters and like 6 people to dress you.
I used to train with John McDonald. I don't know if he still lifts. He was a world champion at the time. If you look him up, you could see some of his crazy shit. I used to train with him. He was fucking psycho. I remember misloading the barbell once. He had 6 on one, 7 on the other. And he fucking nailed his set. It was reps. He nails the set, and I'm spotting him, and he fucking racks it. He looks. You forgot to put a plate on, man. I was like, yeah. I did.
Good set, fist pump,
Fucking psycho.
a whole plate.
Yeah.
Holy
Whole plate.
shit.
He was nuts, man. I think he still lifts. I think he lifts raw now, but yeah, he was nuts.
That's
And so, what are your current numbers at for those, like for the SBD movements? If you had to,
I'm really proud about pulling 500 again, conventional, because I was never a good conventional deadlifter.
Yeah, so
I even think some of the PRI concepts bringing me back into like my wide structure and shit, and like embracing all these different kind of positions has helped me just in general be like, oh, I'm not supposed to ER the fuck out of the bottom, right?
Yeah.
What was I doing?
Yeah.
It's been pretty pumped about that. I haven't been benching much at all, but next month I started competing in all-around weightlifting. There's an Australian association.
Is that like a super total? Squat, bench, dead.
It's old-time strength stuff.
Oh, old time. You're saying?
Yeah.
I said all time.
what is it?
All-around weightlifting. So it's like all the old stuff, like Steinborn lifts. The competition at the end of next month, I'm competing in the US one. It's a reverse grip bench press.
Greg Knuckles trained that once.
Yeah,
Proper. Yeah.
It trains you out of all that impingement in the shoulder. It's actually a really nice
More
stretch.
ER.
Yeah.
Greg Knuckles, I think it was the only thing that he could do that without pissing his shoulder off. And he was just like, I'll just train that.
Yeah.
And he got to something stupid
Yeah.
because he's just an animal. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one. A one-hand deadlift with a dumbbell, a loaded dumbbell.
Yeah.
There's certain rules around that, but it's like just one fucking hand. And then a Zercher lift, like the Zercher lift in their comps was pulled from the thigh.
Yep.
Deadlift a thigh.
You get it up and then hold it and then.
Yeah. So I've been doing that since last summer. I started doing their competitions. You can submit videos quarterly. They have this quarterly competition. But there's an Australian one. It's been funny. I've been reaching out to a lot of people about that. They didn't know.
No idea.
Their rule book is like, there's like 300 lifts in it.
Oh, wow.
And you don't know what's going to be.
You could have anything.
It's like CrossFit. They don't know. You got to train them all.
They will post it up like a couple months out.
Yeah,
But it'll
okay.
be, but you just like, for the most part, it's been really humbling.
Wow.
Some of the shit.
100%.
We are gonna cut sick.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I'm yeah.
Before we wrap this up and head downstairs and hit some of these things, we had one question come through the Discord. Is it your first time in Australia?
Yeah.
Just how's your experience been in Australia?
Oh, it's been amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I worked at a summer camp when I was in college in the US.
Yep.
And the Aussies used to come over, and my group of the Canadians would come over, and we would just like
Bond.
all summer.
Hit it off.
Just together. There was one year I did it for 3 summers. They were leaving. They're like, come back with us. I didn't have anything going on either, but there was just some kind of meathead thing. I was like, I got to get back. I got to whatever. I fucking regretted it ever since. Yeah, regretted it ever since. So it's just been so nice to come out here, and everyone's been like so cool. And a lot of like the people I work with online, there's like so many people that I've met that I've been working with for a couple of years. So it's like such a cool experience to come and see them, and it's like, oh, you're real.
Yeah.
I stayed on the farm in Jamboree. Steve, I've been helping online. He does old-time lifts in his farm. I show up. I get there. He said I could stay on his farm for the week. It's fucking awesome.
Nice.
And I'm like kind of like dressed like this. And he goes, oh, you actually do dress like that? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
What, shorts and thongs?
Yeah.
Shorts and slides.
Shorts,
That's a
thongs,
normal.
fucking drug rug, whatever.
You
You'd
know,
fit in.
it's a pretty normal.
Yeah.
That's what I wear.
This is from like, anti-establishment, leaving the military. I'm like, I can wear the fuck I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you noticed the word of the use cunt in Australia? I've got to ask you because we use it a lot, but it's like a term of endearment here.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Because I know Americans, I don't know if Canadians, the same. Americans find it like,
Yeah.
they're like,
My wife
what
would
the
slap me right in the fucking face if I did that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said it.
Americans are like, wow, but I don't know, is it as bad in Canada? They're a bit more relaxed with it.
Yeah, a little more relaxed.
with
We'd
the
just
word
kind of
cunt.
laugh. We'd pick up that it's like a cultural thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We wouldn't be like fucking idiots about it.
Yeah.
I said it in the gym in America once, and I reckon 30 people turned around and were like, "Whoa, something's about to go down." And I was just like, "Hey, what's going on, cunt?" Like, it's just
What's the saying here? That you call your
You call your enemies mate and your mates cunt.
Yeah,
That's
that's it. Because you can come off when you say mate, like you can be like real condescending.
Passive-aggressive.
Like, what's going on, mate? Like it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
it's just not a.
Yeah, mate.
But then
Yeah.
if you say cunt,
buddy.
it's like really like a term of endearment.
Oh, we're friends.
Yeah, like you're a sick cunt. You're a mad cunt.
It was still kind of.
Yeah.
That's a.
If people want to check out your stuff, where's the best place you send them?
Instagram's like
Instagram's the
my
main one,
bigger
which is
platform
Range
right
of
now.
Strength. This will all be linked in the description box, so you can check that out down there.
Cool.
And then in terms of like coaching or anything like that, do you have anything that people could jump on?
The membership's the main one.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different things on there. Like all the programs are available for people to train with. You get feedback and support from me. And then I also have just like methods and teachings over the years I've put on there for the coaches. I've done some teacher training stuff. So there's a little bit of stuff around there for more educational side of things. And anytime we do cool projects like the old school strength camp was a good one. Any kind of things like that, they're like on there as like little kind of journeys. You can kind of see background behind some of it. And so it's kind of all in one space that I like to just push all things to.
Awesome. Cool. They'll all be linked down below in the description box. And also, if you made it this far, please check out the YouTube video that we're about to go and film downstairs. We're going to do some monkey presses and
sweet.
one arm. What's the bendy one? Tap the
Steinborns?
Really good way to,
Steinborgs and whatever else.
Really good way to warm up my last heavy squats before.
Absolutely.
nationals.
The
Variability.
The tip is the easy part, man.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be what you do afterwards. It's like, it was just supposed to be the easy part.
This
Everyone
is the
makes
easy part.
The tipping of the barbell.
Yeah, just get it back down on the
Tipping
ground.
of the
mate.
barbell.
Maybe we can load up your heaviest squat of the block
Yeah.
with the Steinborg.
I don't even know what a Steinborg is.
It's when the barbell's standing vertically and you wedge yourself in and then stand up with it. And then squat. And then
So
put
yeah,
it back
when
down.
they started measuring the deep knee bend as like a measurement of like who can deep knee bend the most weight, that was when that kind of stuff started happening. Henry Milo Steinborn was the first to do that. That's how he did it. So he would tip the bar so that he could stand and then demonstrate. I think he did 45 kilos in his
From
underwear.
that position.
Yeah, in his tights.
What the fuck?
And he's not like, he's just a normal looking dude. He's a stacked dude, but he just,
Come on, Charles, you can squat 280 like that.
Easy.
If they could do it in the bloody 1900s, mate.
Easy.
Yeah, lock it in.
Can't even hold a side plank for a minute. But I'll do it.
Copenhagen.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, and also good luck with the rest of your little trip around Australia.
Thank you.